This lesson is about expressions with percents. We're going to be able to take a problem with percentages in it and turn it into an expression. So take out your notebooks. If you need to pause the video, go ahead, but you're going to take these notes in your notebook. So this is expressions with percents. Now, if we break this apart, we know that expressions have no equal sign. We know that it can be simplified, but not solved. And we know that it's made up of variables and numbers. Percentages, we know that they are out of 100, and they can be turned into decimals and fractions. So let's review the components of an expression. So in the expression, 3x plus 6. The x is the variable. The 3 is the coefficient, the number in front of the variable. The 3x is called the algebraic term. The 6 is called the constant term. And the plus sign is the operation symbol. So those are our components of an expression. So let's look at an example of where we would see this. So in your notebooks, please write down the problem. We are going to find the total cost of a meal costing X dollars, including a 20% tip. Now, I'm going to show you two ways how to solve this. So I'm going to break my page down the center. So the first thing, we have to figure out what we're buying. So in this problem, we are going to have the food, but we're also going to include that there's a tip. So my total value should be much greater than the food because I have this additional tip value. So the food from the problem is going to cost X dollars, and we're adding the tip. Now, the tip is 20%, but it's 20% of the cost. Depending on the cost of the food, the tip is either going to be bigger or smaller. The more food we buy, the larger tip we'll have to leave. The less food we buy, the smaller the tip. So this will change depending on that value. If you remember, of is going to be to multiply. So I'm going to turn 20% into a decimal, and I'm going to multiply it by the x. So I have x plus 20 hundredths x. Now, this can be simplified because we have a variable, and this term also has the same variable. So when an x is by itself, remember there's a 1 in front of it. So I'm really doing 1x plus 20 hundredths x. So I'm left with 1 and 20 hundredths x. This would be the expression that matches that problem. Now, we know that it's going to be more than 100% because the food plus the tip. This is everything, and we're adding something on to it. That's how we're going to solve it the second way. So again, I'm buying food, but I'm also adding on the tip. When you buy food, you have to pay 100% of the bill. You don't get the luxury of saying, today I only want to pay 50%. You have to pay the 100% that is on that bill. We're also going to include the 20% tip. So if I take these percentages and add them together, I'm actually paying 120%. But I want to take this now and convert it into a decimal. And you have to include the x because it's 120% of both of these things put together. So that's where we get the 1/20 x. Either method will still give you the same answer. It all just depends on which one you like better. If I had to pick, I like option number 2 because I think there's less steps. Let's try one more. So go ahead and write this one down in your notebooks as well. We again are going to find the total. This time we have an item costing $Y. And we're going to have a 10% discount. Remember, we like discounts because it's going to make the value smaller. I'm again going to do it both ways. You pick whichever way you like most. So this time, instead of adding, I'm subtracting the discount because my value is going to be smaller. So the item is Y, and I'm going to subtract the discount, which is 10%, but it's 10% of the cost. If you make it 10% without the Y, you're actually saying that it's just going to be 10 cents. We don't know if it's 10 cents. It all depends on what this original cost is. So I'm going to go ahead and simplify. So that 10%, I'm going to make into a decimal. We know that of means to multiply, and I'm multiplying it by the Y. So I have Y minus 10/100 Y. Again, these terms are the same because they have that variable. So I can go ahead and simplify. Now I'm subtracting 1 whole and 10/100 to get 9/10 Y. So if I knew the price of the item, I could just simply take the item and multiply it by 9/10, and it would give me the final cost. Let's try option 2. We're going to start off the same way. The item minus the discount. We originally are going to pay 100% of the item, but we're going to take away 10% because that's the discount. So I'm now paying 90% of the item. I'm going to turn this into a decimal. We know of means to multiply, and I include the Y. If I put those together, I get the same answer. So again, you pick whichever method you like best. Now, you're going to use these notes to try to answer the questions on the multiple choice worksheet titled Expressions with Percentages. Even though these are multiple choice questions, you need to make sure that you are showing your work.